My boss asked me to cover for him. It backfired. So let me set the stage. I work for a mid-sized marketing firm in the city. It's not glamorous like those TV shows where people wear $5,000 suits and sip whiskey while brainstorming $1 million ad campaigns. No. It's a fluorescent lit office full of overworked employees trying to stretch budgets, meet impossible deadlines, and make slides look exciting enough to impress clients who usually don't even care. And then there's my boss, Mr. Carter. On the surface, Carter is the kind of boss who looks like he stepped out of a LinkedIn ad for future leadership. He's got that slick back salt and pepper hair, always wears tailored suits, and speaks with this fake inspirational tone that makes executives eat out of his hand. But anyone working directly under him knows the truth. Carter is lazy. Not, he delegates efficiently. Lazy, I mean genuinely allergic to work. He's the type of guy who strolls in at 10:30 a.m., Starbucks in hand, then spends an hour bragging about his golf game before disappearing into back-to-back meetings that are really just him hiding in his office scrolling on his phone. The rest of us, we carry the weight. And here's where I come in. I'm not some corporate genius. I'm not the chosen one. I'm just diligent. The type who shows up on time, quietly finishes projects, and makes sure things don't fall apart. The irony is, people like me are invisible until something goes wrong. Then suddenly, everyone notices. But when things run smoothly, crickets. No credit, no praise. Nothing. I'd been at the company for 3 years when Carter pulled me into his office one Tuesday afternoon. I remember it vividly because I thought I was in trouble. He had that look, eyebrows slightly raised, fake concern in his tone. "Hey, could you shut the door for a second?" he said, gesturing with his hand. I closed the door and sat down, my mind already racing through every possible mistake I could have made. Late emails, missed deadline. Did I screw up the quarterly report? Instead, he leaned back in his chair with a sigh and said, "Listen, I need a favor." Now, when your boss says, "I need a favor," it's never really a request. It's an order dressed up in polite language. Carter explained that he had a family emergency coming up later in the week and wouldn't be able to attend the quarterly strategy presentation with the executives. He made it sound like a tragic situation, vague references to a sick relative, a hospital visit, personal stuff he didn't want to get into. He said it so smoothly that, at first, I actually felt sympathy for him. Then he hit me with it. "I need you to cover for me. Just walk them through the presentation. It's all in the deck, nothing complicated. You'll be fine." Now, normally, presenting to the execs is a big deal. It's the kind of thing people fight for because it's how you get noticed. But the catch was, Carter hadn't actually prepared anything. The deck he sent me was 12 slides of vague buzzwords and half-finished charts. I should have said no. I should have told him, "Hey, this is your responsibility, not mine." But let's be honest, when your boss corners you like that, when they frame it as life or death, it's nearly impossible to refuse. And maybe deep down, a small part of me thought, if I do this well, maybe someone will finally notice me. So I said yes. And that one word, yes, became the domino that tipped everything else over. The next 3 days were hell. I basically lived at my desk, rewriting Carter's entire presentation from scratch. His version was unusable random stock photos, numbers that didn't add up, and slides with titles like Innovation Synergy Opportunities, with no actual content underneath. I pulled late nights, surviving on vending machine, snacks and caffeine, reworking the data, calling in favors from coworkers in accounting and sales to get updated numbers, and polishing every word until the presentation actually made sense. By Thursday night, I looked like a zombie, bloodshot eyes, unshaven, tie half undone. But the deck was a masterpiece. I was proud of it. For once, my hard work felt like it could actually shine. Friday morning came, presentation day. I walked into that glass-walled conference room with my laptop, heart pounding like a drum. Around the table sat the executive team, the CEO, CFO, COO, and a few directors. These were people who made decisions that affected hundreds of employees. They barely knew my name. I introduced myself, cleared my throat, and started presenting. At first, I was terrified. My hands shook as I clicked through the slides, but then something shifted. The more I spoke, the more confident I became, because I knew this material. I had built it. Every data point, every chart, every insight, it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just some invisible cog in the machine. I was the machine. The execs leaned forward. They asked questions. And I answered them not with hesitation, but with authority. By the end of the presentation, the CEO actually smiled and said, "Excellent work. Very thorough. This is exactly the direction we should be moving in." I wanted to melt into the floor. No one had ever complimented me like that in this company. When I walked out of the room, I felt 10 feet tall. That lasted about 3 hours. Because at 2 p.m., Carter was back in the office, grinning like a man who just won the lottery. He called me into his office again. "Hey," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Great job today. I heard it went perfectly. I blinked at him. You heard? Yeah, a couple of the execs stopped me in the hall. Told me it was one of the best presentations they'd seen. I knew you'd come through. That's when it hit me. He wasn't planning to give me credit at all. He was letting them believe it was his work. I opened my mouth, ready to protest, but he cut me off with a smug smile. You really saved me today. I owe you one. Then he dismissed me, like I was some intern who had just run a coffee errand. I walked back to my desk in a daze, my stomach sinking. All that work, all those sleepless nights, the praise that could have finally gotten me noticed. And Carter had swallowed it whole, presenting it as his own brilliance. And the worst part? No one would ever know the truth. To the executives, I was still invisible. To Carter, I was just a tool he could exploit. That's when I realized this wasn't a one-time favor. Carter had just discovered the perfect scapegoat, and I had just given him permission. That was the day everything changed. That was the day I stopped being just the diligent, overlooked employee. Because if Carter thought I'd keep being his safety net forever, he had no idea who he was dealing with. After the favor Carter asked me to cover, I thought maybe things would settle back to normal. I thought maybe I could finally get some recognition for my work. Maybe even have a conversation with him about fair credit. Boy, was I wrong. Carter didn't just see me as a hardworking employee. He saw me as his personal safety net, his insurance policy against scrutiny. Almost immediately, the requests started trickling in. At first, they were small things, almost innocent. Can you sign off on this internal memo for me? I'm stuck in meetings. Send this email to the client with my name on it. I'm tied up. I shrugged, thinking, fine, one more favor. It's just paperwork. But then the favors became more complicated, and the stakes began to feel heavy. One Monday morning, I got a message from Carter that made my stomach twist. Hey, I need you to finalize these reports and send them to the board today. I'm tied up at a last-minute meeting. Just use my signature. You know the drill. The drill was signing his name, pretending it was him, and making sure no one noticed. My palms got sweaty. I had crossed a line, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. Refusing Carter wasn't just dangerous for my career. It was unthinkable. He was the kind of boss who could ruin you without leaving a paper trail, and after the first presentation incident, I knew he had all the cards. I spent the day going through spreadsheets, adjusting figures, drafting emails under his name. Each click of send felt like a small compromise of my ethics, but I justified it to myself. I'm just keeping the engine running. No one's really getting hurt. This is temporary. Then came the first sign that this wasn't temporary. I was in the shared drive, hunting for a file that Carter had asked me to clean up, when I stumbled across something I shouldn't have seen. A folder buried on me under layers of misnamed files. Expense Audits 2023 Private. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the first document. It was a spreadsheet of company funds. Legitimate expenses were mingled with personal ones, expensive dinners, luxury vacations, even a few transfers that didn't make sense at all. My eyes widened. Carter had been misusing company money, funneling it into accounts no one was supposed to know about. And then I found reports he had submitted to the board, faked numbers, inflated sales, and manipulated charts. My heart sank. I'd known Carter was lazy and manipulative, but this was criminal. I didn't know what to do. Panic mixed with disbelief. I closed the files quickly, praying no one had noticed. But just as I was catching my breath, Carter appeared behind me in the office hallway. Everything okay? He asked, his voice casual, but his eyes had that glint like he knew exactly what I was thinking. I stammered, yeah, just, filing some reports. He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Good. Remember, if I go down, you go down too. They'll think you're involved, so let's keep our stories straight, okay? It was a warning wrapped in a threat. I nodded, my stomach twisting. That's when I realized I wasn't just covering for Carter's laziness anymore, I was covering for his crimes. And if I made one mistake, one slip, I could be his next scapegoat. The weeks that followed were a tightrope. Carter leaned on me more and more. Signing documents under his name became routine. I handled confidential files, drafted emails, even edited reports before they went to the executives. The constant stress was exhausting. My mind was always on high alert, checking and double-checking everything I did, terrified of slipping up and facing the consequences. And then came the day I accidentally found the damning email chain. It started innocently enough. Carter asked me to organize his inbox, clean up old messages, respond to anything marked urgent. I had been doing it for months, but that day, curiosity got the better of me. One folder caught my eye, Board Matters Private. I hesitated, knowing I was crossing a line, but the temptation was too strong. I clicked on the first email, and there it was. Thread after thread of correspondence between Carter and some outside vendor. They were discussing kickbacks, falsifying invoices, and manipulating project costs so that Carter could skim money off the top. My hands shook as I scrolled through each message. This was concrete proof of everything I had suspected. Proof that could ruin him. I felt a mix of fear and adrenaline. If I went to the board with this, Carter would be gone. But then, what about me? I had been part of some of these projects, approving things on his behalf. Even if I didn't know about the kickbacks, my name was tied to several of the files. Could I go down with him? I was trapped in a web of lies, tangled in Carter's manipulations, and every day felt heavier than the last. He noticed my unease. One afternoon, he called me into his office again. "Look, I can tell something's bothering you," he said, leaning back in his chair with that fake, calm demeanor. "I know this looks messy, but you have to trust me. If I go down, you go down. You don't want that, do you?" I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. It was coercion disguised as camaraderie. I nodded silently. From that moment on, I started keeping tabs, quietly. I created a secret folder of my own, saving copies of emails, documents, and anything else that might protect me if Carter ever tried to throw me under the bus. It became my lifeline, my insurance. Every night, I'd download files, take screenshots, anything that might serve as evidence. It was exhausting, paranoid work, but I couldn't stop. Every day, Carter became bolder. He would send me instructions like, "Sign this, send that, and make sure the Thompson report is polished by the end of the day. I'm counting on you." Each task was more invasive, more ethically gray, and I felt myself sinking into a moral quagmire. I hated it, but I couldn't risk refusing. Not yet. One particular day stands out. Carter asked me to draft a contract for a new client, attaching false financial guarantees and inflating projected earnings. I stared at my screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My mind raced. If I do this, it's fraud. If I don't, Carter will make sure it looks like I sabotaged the deal. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and typed carefully, leaving no trace that could be pinned on me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My conscience felt like a lead weight, pressing down on me. But alongside that, there was a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had the power to bring him down if I played my cards right. And that's exactly what I started planning. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know when, but I knew that the damning email chain I had found could be the key. It could expose everything, the kickbacks, the falsified reports, the misuse of funds without implicating me if I handled it correctly. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Hope that I wasn't just Carter's puppet. Hope that I could take control. Hope that I could survive this web of lies and maybe, just maybe, come out on top. The days turned into weeks and I continued my secret work, covering for Carter, documenting his crimes, and quietly building a shield of evidence. But with each passing day, the tension grew. Every casual glance from Carter, every sudden request, every friendly warning made my heart race. I had to be careful. One wrong move, one accidental click, and it could all blow up. And then, just when I thought I had a handle on things, I found the next bombshell. Another email chain, this one even more incriminating than the first, detailing money transfers, fake invoices, and private meetings with vendors who were complicit in his schemes. It was like peeling back the layers of an onion, every layer more shocking than the last. I realized then that Carter had underestimated me. He thought I was just a quiet, diligent employee who would do as I was told and stay silent. He thought he could manipulate me into being his permanent safety net. But I was learning his patterns. I was documenting every misstep. I was preparing for the day when the truth would come out. And when that day came, Carter wouldn't just be embarrassed, he would be exposed. And I would finally reclaim control of my life and my career. But for now, I had to play the part of the loyal employee, the part of the obedient subordinate, the part of the person he thought he could manipulate. And so I continued walking the tightrope, each day more dangerous than the last, each task a step deeper into his web of lies, all while secretly plotting the day when the scales would finally tip in my favor. Because the more I learned, the more I realized Carter's empire was built on deception, and the higher he climbed, the harder he would fall. And I was going to be the one holding the blueprint for his downfall. If I thought the last few weeks were stressful, I had no idea what was coming. Carter's schemes escalated faster than I could keep up with, and I realized something terrifying. I was no longer just helping him. I was part of the problem, whether I liked it or not. It started with an urgent email from Carter late one Friday afternoon. He had accidentally mismanaged a client project, nothing catastrophic yet, but the client, a major one, had already noticed some inconsistencies in their reports. I got the message. "You need to fix this. I can't handle it. Just make sure they don't see the errors. Sign off as me and make it seamless. Can't afford a scandal." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. This was no longer just cleaning up minor mistakes. This was covering up a potentially career-ending error. My mind raced. If I messed this up, the client would be furious. If I did it perfectly, I was deep in Carter's trap. I spent the night rewriting reports, adjusting numbers, and crafting emails so convincing that anyone who didn't know the details would have thought everything was fine. My laptop became a battlefield of spreadsheets, charts, and emails, all signed under Carter's name. Each click of the send button felt like a nail in my own coffin, and Every time I imagined the client reading these reports, my stomach churned. By Monday morning, I could barely keep my eyes open. My coworkers had started noticing oddities, questions about missing documents, reports taking longer than usual, and sudden shifts in project details. They didn't know the full story, and I couldn't tell them. Not a single soul could know what I was really doing. That's when Sarah, a coworker I trusted for years, pulled me aside in the break room. Her brows were furrowed, concern etched across her face. "Hey," she said softly. "You've been acting weird lately. Are you okay? I've noticed all these late nights, the frantic emails, and honestly, it's starting to worry people." I hesitated. Could I tell her the truth? Could I risk exposing Carter and pulling her into this mess? My instinct was to shake my head and laugh it off, but something in her tone made me pause. She wasn't just being nosy, she genuinely wanted to help. It's complicated, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. It's work stuff. Honestly, I can't really talk about it. She nodded slowly, as if reading between the lines. Look, whatever it is, you don't have to handle it alone. If Carter's involved and it's screwing with you, you can tell me. We'll figure it out. Together. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had spent weeks trying to navigate this alone, carrying the weight of Carter's lies, his threats, his manipulation. Having someone willing to stand with me, it was like a lifeline in the middle of a storm. But even as I considered confiding in her, fear took over. What if Carter finds out? What if he blames me for everything? I had seen firsthand how he twisted situations, how he could make you look guilty in front of executives with nothing but a smile and a few well-chosen words. I didn't respond immediately. I nodded, muttering something vague about maybe later, but inside a spark had been lit. Someone knew something was wrong, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending forever. Later that day, we had a critical client meeting. The project I had spent countless hours fixing was under scrutiny. Carter had arranged to attend via video call, but I knew he wasn't paying attention. The client, a sharp and demanding executive named Mr. Lawrence, immediately noticed discrepancies. "I'm looking at the Q2 report," he said, voice tense. "The numbers here don't match what we discussed last week. Can someone explain this?" I felt my stomach drop. I opened my mouth to clarify, to walk them through the corrected data, but before I could speak, Carter interrupted, live over video. Perfectly calm. "Oh, that must be a mistake in the report you received. Must be a clerical error," he said smoothly. "I'll let my assistant handle that. Actually, why don't you—" my name. And just like that, the room turned to me. I stammered, trying to explain the corrections, but Mr. Lawrence wasn't convinced. He had noticed inconsistencies in the data, and Carter leaned back in his chair, watching me falter. "I don't know why this is happening," Carter said, eyes narrowing, tone clipped, "but clearly someone messed up. Looks like it's on my name. I trust they'll fix it quickly." The words hit me like a punch. He just threw me under the bus in front of the client and the board. I froze, momentarily speechless. My mind screamed at me to defend myself, to tell the truth, but Carter's reputation shielded him. To everyone in that room, I was the one who made the mistake. Humiliation washed over me. The entire team avoided eye contact as I tried to salvage the situation, calmly walking the client through the corrected figures, pretending I hadn't just been set up, but inside, anger and dread churned like a storm. After the meeting, I retreated to my desk, hands shaking, heart pounding. I couldn't believe how brazen Carter had become. How long had he been setting me up for this moment? Weeks? Months? And how many times had I unknowingly helped him dig this trap? Sarah appeared at my side again, concern written across her face. "That was brutal. Are you okay?" I laughed bitterly. "No, I'm not okay. He just threw me under the bus in front of the client, publicly. And the worst part, no one will believe me if I try to explain." She sighed. "You can't keep covering for him. It's only going to get worse. You need to decide what you're going to do before he ruins you completely." Her words resonated. For the first time, I really considered my options. I could continue covering for him, hoping to survive and maybe get recognition later. Or I could expose him, but exposing him was risky. There was so much he could throw on me. The damning emails, the faked reports, all of it could make me look complicit if I wasn't careful. I spent that evening pacing my apartment, mind racing. I had the evidence. I had been documenting everything secretly. If I timed it right, if I presented it correctly, I could take him down without implicating myself. But the fear was paralyzing. One wrong move, one misstep, and my career, maybe even my freedom, could be gone. I went to bed that night with a knot in my stomach. Sleep was fitful, filled with dreams of Carter smirking as I tried to explain myself to an unforgiving board. I woke up exhausted and more determined than ever. The next day, Carter didn't even acknowledge the previous debacle. He acted like everything was normal, sending me emails with tasks that were more manipulative than ever. I realized then he didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a tool, shield, a way to absorb any consequences for his mistake. And I had to change that dynamic fast. By midweek, the tension in the office was palpable. Coworkers whispered about the client meeting. Questions floated around like shadows. Inconsistency, odd behavior, minor error. I could see them connecting dots, slowly realizing that something was off. And every time they glanced at me, I felt their silent judgment, even though I wasn't the real culprit. Sarah stayed close, offering support in subtle ways, dropping notes, checking in, sharing insights. Her presence reminded me that I wasn't completely alone, that I had allies if I was smart about it. And then it happened. A small slip from Carter during a casual team discussion. He made a reference to the client's concern over the Q2 report, almost jokingly, but everyone noticed. He laughed it off, but I saw the room shift. People were looking at me, then at him, then back at me. And in that instant, something snapped inside me. Humiliation, fear, and rage collided, forming a single burning thought. No more covering, no more protecting him, no more being the pawn in his games. That night, I pulled out my secret folder, the one filled with emails, reports, and screenshots. I sat at my desk for hours, reviewing everything, making a mental plan. Every misstep Carter had made, every fraudulent email, every falsified report, it was all there, meticulously documented. I realized something critical. I had the power now. I had the proof. And the longer I waited, the stronger my hand would be. Carter had underestimated me. He had thought I'd stay silent forever, that I'd keep covering for him, that I'd let him use me as a scapegoat. But he was wrong. The next morning, I walked into the office with a new mindset, calm, collected, and determined. Carter noticed immediately. His smirk faltered slightly, just enough for me to see that he sensed a change. He didn't know it yet, but the game had shifted. From that point forward, I stopped being his cover. I continued to do my work. Yes, but I no longer let him manipulate me. Every task he assigned, every signature he asked me to forge, I documented. Every email I sent under his name, I saved. Every fraudulent report, every manipulated chart, it went into my secret folder. Carter didn't know it, but the tables had turned. And I knew one thing for sure. When the time came, he would pay. Because everyone has a breaking point, and mine had just arrived. After the breaking point, everything changed. I wasn't just a pawn anymore. I was a player, and I had to be smart. The humiliation from the client meeting, Carter throwing me under the bus, and the mounting stress had done something strange. It sharpened me. I became hyper-aware of every little detail in the office, every interaction, every email, every file. I had to be careful, but I also had to act, because Carter had built his little empire on lies and manipulation, and now it was time for him to crumble. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. Not just the obvious stuff, the emails, the reports, the forged signatures, but everything subtle. Every little piece of evidence that could connect him to the misdeeds I had stumbled upon. Screenshots became my new best friend. I started taking voice memos whenever he gave instructions verbally, especially if they were shady or unethical. Every document I touched under his name, every email I sent on his behalf, I saved duplicates, backed them up in a hidden folder that only I could access. At first I felt paranoid. Every time I clicked save, I imagined Carter somehow noticing, but I reminded myself, paranoia is just the first step to survival. I couldn't trust him, not for a second, and I had to protect myself. Sarah and James, my trusted allies, became part of this covert operation. We were careful, meeting in hushed tones in the break room, exchanging tips on how to avoid suspicion, and coordinating small ways they could help me gather information without alerting Carter. Sarah would casually walk by Carter's office while I was busy, letting me know if he was on a phone call or stepping out. James would drop printed files in my inbox with updated client reports, giving me extra time to analyze inconsistencies. We were careful. We couldn't be obvious. Carter's sixth sense for manipulation was uncanny, and I knew the second he suspected anything, he would try to gaslight me or worse, make me take the fall for something I didn't do. And that's exactly what happened next. Carter sensed the shift. I could feel it in the way he observed me over his glasses during meetings, the subtle tilt of his head when I walked past his office, the fake smiles that didn't reach his eyes. One morning, he called me into his office the first time in weeks with that calm, friendly demeanor he always used when he wanted something. "Hey, you've been doing amazing work lately," he said, leaning back in his chair, hands folded. Really, the leadership noticed. "I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a promotion. You've earned it." You know, my stomach dropped. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was dangling the bait to test me, to see if he could manipulate me back into obedience. I smiled politely, nodding, all while my mind raced. "Nice try, Carter. You think you can scare me back into covering for you? Not happening." "Thanks," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I appreciate it." He studied me, trying to gauge my reaction. "Of course. But just remember, loyalty is key. Keep helping me out, and the sky's the limit." I nodded again, hiding the storm inside. On the surface, I was the loyal employee, the obedient subordinate. In reality, I was plotting. Every compliment, every promise, every fake smile was another opportunity to learn, to document, to strategize. The next few weeks were a balancing act. I played the part of the perfect employee while secretly building my case. Each email I sent on Carter's behalf was duplicated and saved. Each report I edited under his name was logged and backed up. Every verbal instruction he gave was recorded discreetly. And then came the announcement that changed everything. A corporate audit. The company sent out an official email stating that the finance department and external auditors would review all projects, expenses, and client accounts for the past 2 quarters. Panic gripped Carter the second he saw the email. He tried to mask it with casual indifference, but I could see it, the slight tremor in his hands, the forced laughter, the tiny bead of sweat on his temple. Over the next few days, Carter became more erratic. He demanded constant updates, checked over my shoulder obsessively, and micromanaged in a way I had never seen. But this was exactly what I needed. Every time he overreached, he made mistakes, left trails, or said things he shouldn't have, all while I continued to play the loyal subordinate. I started planting evidence strategically, without him realizing it. A subtle tweak here, a misfiled email there, nothing obvious enough for him to suspect me, but enough to lead the auditors straight to the inconsistencies. I created a network of breadcrumbs that, if followed, would expose every shady deal, every kickback, every falsified report. Carter didn't know I was orchestrating his downfall, and the arrogance he showed, thinking he could manipulate everyone, would be his undoing. One morning, he stormed into my cubicle, red-faced and furious. "Did you touch the Patterson account?" he barked. I looked up innocently. "I just updated the spreadsheet you asked me to." He scowled. "Make sure nothing goes wrong. The auditors are reviewing everything, and I don't want any mistakes." I nodded, hiding my excitement. Every outburst, every frantic demand, every careless comment he made was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Sarah and James continued to be my quiet support network. They would subtly nudge me when he was nearby, keep tabs on emails, and ensure that no suspicious activity could be traced back to me. We had a silent system no one else could know. The tension in the office grew palpable as Carter's panic bled into the team. People whispered about his erratic behavior, some questioning his judgment, others simply avoiding him altogether. I was meticulous. I kept every screenshot organized, every memo timestamped, and every suspicious email stored in multiple secure locations. The evidence was mounting. Carter's empire of lies was fragile, and with the audit looming, it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. One afternoon, I overheard Carter on the phone with a vendor, arguing heatedly about project payments. "I don't care what the auditors say," he hissed. "Make sure everything looks clean, and if anyone asks, it's on my assistant." Got it? I froze for a moment, then discreetly recorded the call. Every incriminating word was captured, every lie, every manipulation. It was perfect. I now had the ultimate leverage, concrete evidence of Carter's schemes, documented in a way that left no room for doubt. That evening, I sat at my desk, reviewing all the files, screenshots, and recordings I had accumulated over the past weeks. The folder was massive, a digital arsenal of proof that Carter was walking on borrowed time. And the beauty of it was that he didn't even realize I was building it. I leaned back in my chair, taking a deep breath. For the first time, I felt a sense of control. Carter thought he was manipulating me, controlling me, testing my loyalty, but the truth was, I had been controlling the narrative all along. The next day, the audit officially began. Auditors arrived, reviewing files, asking questions, and digging into the projects Carter had handled. He tried to interfere, tried to smooth over discrepancies, but the evidence I had planted was subtle, undeniable. Every misstep he made, every half-truth he tried to push only dug him deeper. I continued playing my role, perfectly obedient, diligent, and calm, all while internally tracking every mistake he made. Every incorrect number, every falsified invoice, every casual lie he threw into conversations was being documented, saved, and cataloged. Carter had no idea that the very tools he relied on to manipulate me were being used against him. By the end of the first week of the audit, it was clear that Carter was panicking. He became irritable, distant, and more controlling, yet every move he made only strengthened my position. I had become invisible and untouchable, the loyal assistant everyone believed was still under his thumb, quietly orchestrating his downfall from the shadows. And then, in a moment of supreme arrogance, Carter did the one thing that would seal his fate. During a casual discussion with the auditors, he casually mentioned a side project he had handled personally, implying that all irregularities were minor oversights that were technically under my control. He didn't know that I had already backed up all communications and emails proving that every decision he claimed was mine was actually dictated by him, signed by him, and manipulated by him. I smiled to myself, almost imperceptibly. The trap was set. He had just provided the auditors with a direct link to his own misconduct without realizing it. All I had to do was present the evidence strategically, and it would be game over. The best part, he still thought he was manipulating me. He still thought I was loyal. He didn't realize that every smile, every nod, every yes sir, I had given him was part of my plan to finally bring him down. By the end of the week, I had not only preserved my own position, but had also positioned myself perfectly to expose him without risk to myself. Carter's panic was growing and his mistakes were becoming more frequent. The evidence was stacking up. The audit was digging deeper, and all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment, because everyone has a breaking point, and Carter's empire of lies was about to collapse, and I would be the one standing when it did. The morning of the audit felt different. There was an electric tension in the office, whispers, nervous laughter, the faint clatter of keyboards as everyone tried to act normal. But I knew better. Carter was panicking. I could feel it in his walk, the way his eyes darted toward mine, the subtle tremor in his hands as he reviewed the files he thought I'd innocently prepared. The auditors arrived right on schedule, laptops open, pens ready, expressions unreadable. Carter greeted them with his usual charm, the confident smile he had perfected over years of social maneuvering. But beneath it, I could see the cracks forming. Every time an auditor asked a pointed question, every time a file was requested, his confidence faltered. "Let's start with the Q2 reports," the lead auditor said. "We'll review all major accounts and client communications." Carter leaned back in his chair, glancing at me. "Of course," he said smoothly. "My assistant here has everything perfectly organized." "Right. My name." I nodded, playing the part. "Absolutely," I said. But inside, I was calm. I had every document, every email, every voice memo organized, timestamped, and ready. Carter had no idea the very files he trusted me with were about to bring him down. The first hour was tense but routine. The auditors asked questions, flipped through files, and occasionally glanced at Carter with a raised eyebrow. Then came the first major inconsistency, a series of client invoices that didn't match actual payments. Carter tried to play it off. "Oh, that's probably a clerical error," he said, forcing a chuckle. "We'll get that corrected immediately." One auditor, a sharp-eyed woman named Miss Patel, didn't smile. "Clerical errors don't usually add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars over multiple accounts," she said. Carter's forced composure wavered. He turned to me, voice low but urgent. "Explain this. Make it look like it's a simple mistake." I stayed calm. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times. I opened the folder I had prepared, showing all the evidence I had carefully collected. Screenshots, emails, reports, everything laid out logically, clearly, indisputably. "Actually," I said softly, "it isn't a mistake. Here are the emails, the invoices, and the approvals. Every action is documented, and every discrepancy can be traced directly to Carter's directives." And Carter's face went pale. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a twitching jaw and flaring nostrils. He tried to interject, tried to redirect blame, but I kept my tone calm, professional, and firm. "These communications show exactly what was instructed, including client misrepresentations and unauthorized transfers." The room went silent. The auditors leaned in, scanning the documents. Carter's panic grew with every passing second. "My name." "You can't be serious," he hissed. "This isn't how it looks. They'll think I'm being set up." "I'm just presenting the facts," I said. "The documentation doesn't lie." Minutes turned into an hour as the auditors cross-referenced files, listened to the voice memos, and compared emails. Every piece of evidence I had planted, every detail I had recorded, painted a clear picture. Fraud, negligence, and intentional client deception. Carter tried desperately to pin some of the blame on me, but it was futile. The proof was organized, undeniable, and meticulously sourced. Finally, Miss Patel looked up, expression grave. "Mr. Carter, these documents show a consistent pattern of misuse of funds, client deception, and internal manipulation. We need to escalate this to the board immediately." Carter's face contorted. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. This is unfair. My name was assisting me. It's all their fault." The auditors didn't flinch. "The evidence shows otherwise," Miss Patel said. "It's clear that these actions were directed by you. We cannot hold my name responsible for following your instructions." Carter's world was crumbling in real time, right in front of the entire office. I could see coworkers leaning out of their cubicles, whispering, their eyes wide as the boardroom slowly filled with the stark reality of his downfall. The guy who had manipulated, lied, and used everyone as his shield was finally exposed. The board meeting convened shortly after. Carter entered, trying to maintain composure, but the moment he saw the documents I had prepared laid out on the table, his confidence faltered. The executives scanned the files, each one raising an eyebrow, whispering to one another. "Mr. Carter," the CEO said finally, voice cold and deliberate, "can you explain these irregularities?" Carter tried his usual charm, his rehearsed lines. "These are misunderstandings, nothing intentional. My assistant may have—" "I have the evidence right here," I said, standing calmly. "Emails, voice memos, invoices, client communications, every action you instructed, every misrepresentation is documented." The boardroom went silent. Carter's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, raw, unmasked fear. He lunged, pointing at me. "You're lying. You're trying to ruin me." I shook my head. "The documents don't lie. You misused funds, deceived clients, and tried to manipulate me into covering it up. I'm just presenting the truth." Executives reviewed the files, nodding, murmuring among themselves. The CFO leaned back, exhaling slowly. "This is extensive. We're talking about intentional fraud, misrepresentation to clients, and internal manipulation. This is serious." Carter stammered, tried to defend himself, but every word he spoke only reinforced the evidence I had presented. The emails, the invoices, the memos, everything pointed directly to him. Finally, the CEO spoke. "Mr. Carter, given the severity of this situation, your actions have put the company at risk. We have a decision to make." Carter's face went pale. I could see him calculating, desperate for a way out, trying to imagine how to spin this, but it was too late. "And," the CEO continued, "given the extent of the misconduct, we are taking measures that go beyond standard termination. Not only are you being removed from your position, but the company will be initiating legal action to recover misused funds and pursue charges where applicable. Additionally, we are restructuring the management team to ensure oversight and prevent such incidents in the future." A collective gasp went through the room. Carter's mouth opened, but no words came out. His empire, his carefully curated facade, had crumbled completely, and everyone was watching it unfold. Lie. I felt a strange mix of vindication and relief. Months of meticulous planning, documentation, and quiet strategy had led to this moment. Carter had underestimated me, manipulated me, and tried to control me, and now he was the one paying the price. As the board continued discussing the fallout, coworkers peeked into the room, whispering excitedly. The tension, the fear, the uncertainty all dissipated as the reality sank in. Carter was finished. But there was one more twist that nobody saw coming. The CEO paused, looking around the room. "And regarding the team members who were inadvertently involved in these projects," they said, eyes locking on me, "we recognize that some employees were forced into compromising positions under misleading instructions. They will not only be cleared of any wrongdoing, but also offered support for career advancement and professional development. Exceptional diligence in documenting and reporting will be recognized accordingly." The office went silent. I blinked, taken aback. I had expected clearance, maybe some verbal acknowledgement, but what they announced next was beyond what I could have imagined. "Effective immediately, my name is being promoted to a senior management position, tasked with overseeing compliance and auditing within the department. Your initiative, integrity, and attention to detail have set a standard for the company." I felt a rush of disbelief, then a flood of pride. Months of stress, fear, and meticulous planning had not only exposed Carter, but also rewarded me. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice in the most satisfying, public way possible. Carter slumped in his chair, defeated. His smirk was gone, replaced by a mixture of rage and shame. The same people he had manipulated and bullied now watched as he was dismantled piece by piece. Every lie, every scheme, every unethical move laid bare for everyone to see. I leaned back, quietly observing. I had played the long game perfectly. I had acted loyal, built my case, documented everything, and waited for the moment when the truth would speak for itself. And now it had. The office buzzed with excitement and whispered congratulations. Sarah and James exchanged knowing smiles, subtle nods, acknowledging the role we had all played in this triumph. Carter's downfall was complete, but more importantly, my rise had begun. And as the boardroom emptied, I realized something profound. It wasn't just about revenge or exposure anymore. It was about reclaiming control, asserting integrity, and proving that no one, not even the most charismatic, manipulative boss, could underestimate me and get away with it. The world had watched Carter's fall, and now they would watch me soar. The morning after the board meeting, the office felt different. It wasn't just quieter, it was lighter, as if everyone had collectively exhaled a long-held breath. Carter, the man who had dominated the floor with charisma and subtle terror, was gone. Officially fired, disgraced, and for the first time in months, I could finally feel the weight on my shoulders lift. I arrived early, coffee in hand, watching as security escorted him out of the building. He looked smaller somehow, slouched over, his expensive suit ill-fitting as if it were a costume for a role he no longer had. His usual confident smirk was gone, replaced by something raw, fear, shame, and anger all mixed together. People in the lobby whispered, some nodding at me with approval, others shaking their heads in disbelief. I couldn't help but smirk just a little. Karma, after all, was a patient friend. Walking to my desk, I was greeted by Sarah and James, who had already arrived, both smiling knowingly. "You survived," Sarah said, half teasing, half relieved. "Barely," I muttered, setting down my bag. But honestly, it wasn't survival anymore. It was victory. Months of tension, stress, and strategic planning had led to this exact moment. Carter's reign was over, and I was standing tall. The executive team followed shortly after. Mr. Allen, the CEO, came to my desk personally, a rare gesture in itself. "You handled yourself exceptionally well," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Your professionalism, attention to detail, and integrity during this audit were beyond commendable. You not only preserved the company's interests, but also demonstrated what true leadership looks like under pressure." I felt a mix of pride and disbelief. All those sleepless nights, the moral dilemmas, the constant fear of retaliation, it had been worth it. Carter's favor, the one that had initially felt like a burden, a trap, had inadvertently given me the push I needed to show my worth. Thank you," I said, voice steady, though my heart raced. "It's been challenging, but I'm just glad the truth came out." The CEO nodded, eyes sharp and approving. "Indeed, and effective immediately, we are promoting you to senior management. You will oversee compliance and auditing in this department. Consider it both recognition of your efforts and a responsibility to ensure situations like this never happen again." A rush of excitement and disbelief coursed through me. Promotion, recognition, validation, all the work Carter had stolen from me, all the sleepless nights and sacrifices had finally been acknowledged and officially credited to me. Word spread quickly. By mid-morning, coworkers were stopping by, congratulating me, shaking my hand, offering high fives and smiles. The tension that had hung over the office for months was gone, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and shared relief. People who had been hesitant or fearful around Carter now looked at me differently, not just with respect, but with admiration. Sarah came by my desk again, a sly grin on her face. "Guess all that sneaky documentation and late-night work paid off, huh?" I laughed, feeling the weight of the past months slip further off my shoulders. It did. And honestly, it feels amazing to finally breathe. James leaned in, whispering conspiratorially, "You totally played him. He never even saw it coming." I grinned. "He didn't. Not once." Despite the celebration and the congratulatory messages, I couldn't help but reflect on how this all started. How I had been a diligent but overlooked employee, someone Carter thought he could manipulate endlessly. How he asked me to cover for him in that first presentation, a simple favor that spiraled into weeks of cover-ups, forged documents, and sleepless nights. And yet, that favor had been the push I needed. It forced me out of complacency, made me realize the importance of standing up for myself, and showed me the power of careful planning and integrity. Carter had underestimated me, as many people do in workplaces like ours. He thought silence was obedience. He thought loyalty could be exploited. But silence isn't always submission, and when it's combined with strategy, it can become a weapon. The day continued with meetings, phone calls, and an endless stream of congratulations. I handled everything with calm professionalism, aware now that my reputation had shifted. People trusted me, looked to me for guidance, and respected my judgment. It was surreal. By lunchtime, the office had organized an informal celebration. Nothing extravagant, just coffee and pastries, but the energy was palpable. Coworkers gathered around, sharing laughs, recounting their relief at Carter's departure, and genuinely celebrating the new chapter. I caught eyes with Sarah and James, and we exchanged a look that said more than words ever could. Mission accomplished. But amidst the celebration, I reminded myself of the lessons I had learned. I had been forced into a moral gray zone, a place where fear, obligation, and loyalty collided. It was easy to let someone like Carter manipulate you, to feel trapped and helpless, but the experience had taught me the value of documenting, observing, and planning. And most importantly, it had taught me that standing up for yourself doesn't make you disloyal, it makes you strong. As the day wound down, I found a quiet moment at my desk, reflecting on everything. Carter's downfall had been dramatic and public. His panic, his attempts to manipulate me, and his eventual exposure had left a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it. But my rise had been quieter, methodical, and ultimately empowering. I looked around the office, seeing coworkers chatting, laughing, and exchanging ideas. The atmosphere was vibrant, optimistic, and renewed, and I realized something. The office wasn't just safe now, it was a place where integrity, diligence, and courage were recognized, where people like me could thrive. Before leaving for the day, I stopped by the empty space where Carter's desk had been. A faint chill lingered, a reminder of the stress and manipulation that had once dominated the office. I didn't feel revengeful. I felt resolved, grateful for the opportunity to reclaim my professional life and integrity. I turned away, walking toward the elevator with a sense of closure. Months of fear, stress, and moral compromise had culminated in a single truth. You cannot let someone take advantage of your silence. You cannot allow manipulation to go unchecked. Standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, is the first step to reclaiming control over your life. As the elevator doors closed, I took a deep breath, thinking about the future, promotion, respect, a supportive team, all of it was mine to build upon. Carter's chapter was over, but mine was just beginning. And if there's one message I could leave for anyone reading this, it's this. Never let someone take advantage of your silence. Document, observe, and plan. And when the time is right, don't be afraid to stand up. The truth has a way of catching up, and when it does, the outcome can be far more empowering than you ever imagined. I pressed the button for the lobby, feeling lighter than I had in months. The sunlight streamed through the glass doors as I stepped out into the world beyond the office, leaving behind manipulation, fear, and betrayal. Ahead lay opportunity, respect, and a new chapter one I had earned entirely on my own terms. For the first time in a long time, I smiled genuinely, without fear, without caution, without doubt. I had survived the storm, I had exposed the truth, and I had risen. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.